go from waving my metal detector to on my back screaming. And in that time, even though I had very little conscious control, I knew I'd stepped on an IED. I liked working out and being active. I figured, well, that's not going to be able to happen anymore. I'm going to be in a wheelchair forever. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I had a lot of time to just kind of sit there in the hospital bed and hang out. I think through those first PT sessions, I went, oh, I can still work out. Well, after that, I went back to my bed, got out my laptop, and I just Googled disabled working out. The Paralympics popped up, went out to the Paralympics and managed to get bronze. I certainly learned the truth about what it's like to be, a double above knee amputee.
Rob, welcome to the Point of Impact. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
First, we dispense with the EOD versus combat engineer jokes, or what?
We're all part of the same
We're always
team,
cleaning up your mess. Well, we're always waiting on you guys. Yeah, we didn't have to wait 4 hours for you guys to show up.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's not that many of you guys. There's a ton of us. And we're finding a ton of stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've followed your story for a while, and I know, you've been on other shows, Jocko, and love that you kept a journal. It's great detail. You have a great way of expressing the emotion, really bringing the reader into what the experience is like. So I really appreciate that because I love storytelling.
Yeah.
I tell people that especially since I've got the very limited input, I've got kind of an overdeveloped or overactive output. I love storytelling. But
yeah, man. That's funny.
I'm curious though. Have you always been an athlete, or was that something you kind of picked up? I tend to think that, especially in the Marines gave you the mindset for becoming an endurance athlete, right? Or was this something you'd always had?
I mean, I think I grew up on a farm, so I was very active as a kid. I played baseball, soccer as a kid. Ended up, did a little bit of football. Was not very good at it. I should have stuck with soccer. But then when I hit high school, and I was always really good at running. I was always one of the fastest kids in my class. We had this thing at my elementary school called Run Club, where parents would drop their kids off before school started, maybe an hour before school, and you just run laps before school started. And every time you finished the lap, you got one of those metal bottle caps, and then you turned your bottle caps in at the end of the end of Run Club. They tallied up your mileage for the morning. And then as you got more and more miles throughout your elementary school career, they would give you patches. So I think by the time I got to fifth grade, I got the coveted 125-mile patch. And I think it was me and one other kid. So, I was always pretty good at running all the way up to high school. And then high school, I think I got into the wrong sports. Tried out for football, wasn't very good at it. Tried out for wrestling, wasn't that good at it. Didn't make the baseball team. What I really probably should have been doing was cross country, but I didn't do that. And so I had a late growth spurt in early high school, I kind of got away from sports a little bit, and I shifted over to computers, computer games, video games, that kind of stuff. And that kind of took me into college. And then when I joined the Marine Corps, I kind of rediscovered fitness generally, just getting ready for the PFT and that kind of stuff. Rediscovered that, talent for running and everything.
So you didn't join right out of high school. You went to college.
Yeah, I went to Virginia Tech to try and become a computer scientist. And unfortunately, my work ethic was about the same as in high school. And as a lot of people discover, you can have a work ethic in high school that does pretty good for you, but when you try and apply that to college, it does not work out. And unfortunately, it did not work out for me very well.
It's funny too about growing up on a farm. There's like the city boys and the farm boys. When they get to basic training, you can always tell the ones that are used to waking up at like 3:45 in the morning, and they're just knocking out push-ups, and they're like, yeah, do a 5 mile run. All right. Or the army is big on ruck marches. and
Yeah.
and the farm boys, and all the city, the urban, the suburbanites. They're like, this is hard. What this is what I do before breakfast. And
Yeah.
but that's funny. Just the different mentality.
Certainly there's all people from all walks of life can be successful in the military, but there is that aspect of growing up on a farm where you're kind of used to just going out there and doing the same exact thing for hours and hours and hours at a time. And it's usually something that you don't really particularly want to be doing.
I wish I had, I wish I had some acres right now. And my boys, they need to muck some stalls. I need them to start tossing some bales of hay,
Yeah, it's certainly a good lesson in just doing something that you don't want to do. That is hard and pretty boring. Yeah, I grew up, cleaning horse stalls and stacking hay bales in the barn.
I know. Yeah. Just tell my 6-year-olds, listen, we need a cord of wood chopped before breakfast. Cause we don't even have a fireplace here, but just go do it.
Don't even have a fireplace.
So you started off in computer science. When did what changed? When did you change course?
Yeah, after my junior year, I realized that I think after my first semester of junior year, my grades weren't good, and I think I basically failed a couple of tests in my primary computer science classes, and I realized that what I was doing was not working. And instead of just, instead of reevaluating my work ethic and how I was actually approaching college, I just decided that I just shouldn't do computer science anymore. And what I should do is join the Marines. Or actually, I didn't decide to join the Marines right away. I had that existential crisis, and I talked to a buddy that had joined the Marines the year before, and he said it was amazing. It was the best thing he ever did. So I went and researched the Marines, read a book called Brotherhood of Heroes about the Battle of Peleliu. And I went, yes, that's what I need to do. I need to be a part of a brotherhood. This is what I need in my life. And so I figured the best way to do that was just to go ahead and join the Marine Corps and volunteer to go over and fight in one of the 2 wars that we were in. So that's what I did. But I did end up I joined the reserves and finished college with the intention of being an officer. But prior to graduating from college, my unit was sending a volunteer platoon to Iraq. So I just went ahead and volunteered and never got around to applying to OCS or anything.
And so just looking back on the last few years when the Army, Air Force, Navy were all recruiting lower numbers, not hitting their quotas. And the Marines never missed a quota, never recruiting.
Yeah.
They have the smallest recruiting budget. They just don't need to. And the part of that reason was they did not change their standards. I did hear some grumbling, like there was a little bit of an erosion. Like nobody is immune to the societal, trends, but thank goodness there's that I think in general the societal trend is back at an upturn, but maybe that's just me. However, the Marines were most immune just because they're like, you're a Marine. We're the Marines. And it goes back to that, we're looking for a few good men, and the rest of the branches are like, we'll take anybody. We'll take them all. We'll fix you.
Yeah, there's definitely a different mindset in terms of recruiting in the Marine Corps. It's not really about, here's what we're offering that you're going to get, like college and career training and all these things. It's just what we're offering is you have the opportunity to become a Marine, if you think you can do it. And I think that's attractive to a lot of people that are of the mindset that they are considering joining the military, because you have to be in a certain place in your life in order to start thinking about that. So I think that's probably a big part of it. And I think another part of it is they just maintained high standards for their recruiters too.
So joining the Marines, and you made it to your third year in college before deciding to change course.
Yeah.
I made it three semesters. But anyways,
Well, I was doing okay in the first 2 years. I was getting like C's, but it was just when the heat got turned up on the difficulty of the classes, as it does as you progress through your college career. Eventually, it just got to a point where I couldn't apply that same crappy work ethic to what I was doing, and the grades, they tanked. And so I realized that I'm not gonna be able to graduate in less than 4 years, and for whatever reason, that was important to me. And I decided that computer science wasn't my thing, and I needed to go do something else.
I think the clincher for me was that like my biology 101 was 2 lectures and 1 lab a week or something like that. And the 1 lab, I could not get it changed. It was at 8 a.m. on a Friday.
Oh man. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I will not be making that.
Most people get in trouble with partying in college. I just played video games all the time. That's all I did. And so that's what it was for me. I was addicted to something else as opposed to the partying. I was addicted to playing video games, and I just prioritized that over everything else.
Man. I needed the military to get that work ethic, like you said.
Yeah.
And I did. So the Marines, like all recruits, they break you down, they build you back up, and they turn you into it's fanatical almost, how loyal, and just you become a Marine, and that's pretty elite. So what was that process for you?
I was pretty bought in before I even got to boot camp. I was pretty certain that this is what I think a lot of recruits are already very well bought into being a Marine by the time they get to boot camp. You don't join the Marines without at least some sort of semblance of wanting to be that. And so when that's what you want to be, you buy in pretty heavily. And so it wasn't a huge transition for me in terms of desire to be a Marine. But I think the primary thing that you get taught at boot camp is just you don't matter anymore. Really, if I had to sum it up into one sentence, you don't matter. What matters is your fellow Marines in the Marine Corps. And you learn that in boot camp through pain, discomfort, and punishment. And by the time I got I got enough of that. By the time I graduated boot camp, I realized that I did not matter anymore. What mattered was other people. And, so mission success in terms of boot camp.
Did you choose combat engineer right off the bat, or how did that come across?
No. So my original plan was to join the reserves and finish college so that I could apply to OCS. And so I joined the reserves, finished college, and the only reserve unit that was close by was a combat engineer unit. And I think originally I was interested in tanks or maybe being a radio operator or something, but they didn't have that billet at the recruiting station the company that I was going to. The only billet they had was combat engineer, and I didn't know anything about it. And so, I just kind of went, okay, I'll be a combat engineer then, I guess. Luckily, I got one of the only job in combat engineering that I would really want to do, which was using explosives and, finding bombs. And, I don't think I would have been particularly satisfied doing construction or doing air wing stuff. And no offense to anybody that does that, but it wouldn't have been satisfying to me. It kind of worked out in my favor. Luck helped me out there.
You love the explosives, just like me. I love blowing shit up. You're in the reserves. Did you have a day job? Did you go back to school?
Yeah, I mean, I went to boot camp after my junior year, and then went to my reserve unit, drilled there for a year. And then the next summer after my senior year, after I graduated, that's when I went to combat engineer school. That's when I went to Marine combat training. But while I was at engineer school, that's when word got out that they were going to send a volunteer platoon to go to Iraq in 2008. So I put my hand up and volunteered to go. And so it was basically between combat engineer school. So I graduated college, went to combat engineer school, and pretty shortly after that, we went to 29 Palms to begin our workup. So there wasn't a whole lot of dead space in there.
What deployment was it? Was it your first deployment, or was it a following deployment when you were injured?
Yeah, so my first deployment to Iraq was Habbaniyah, and that was 2008. So there wasn't tons going on in that area. For us, we were mostly doing cache sweeps. So just going out, and for anybody that doesn't know, the enemy would bury their weapons in various places around the city for use later on. And at that point, we were trying to return security and a better way of life to the city of Habbaniyah. So the way that we were doing that, part of the way that we were doing that was going and finding all these caches of weapons, pulling them out of the ground, and so that, people could walk around and not be concerned that they were going to step on this giant bomb. And so the people of Habbaniyah would alert us to a place where they thought there was a cache of weapons. We'd patrol out there. The infantry guys would set up security, and then me and another combat engineer would just use our metal detector to search the entire, courtyard or whatever the area was to try and find the weapons. And usually we would find them, and we would pull them out, and then we'd call you guys, and you guys would come out and decide what to do with them.
I know I've heard stories of some of the caches that were found in Iraq, and I know a lot of buddies who've done some really huge disposals. Stuff the standoff is a mile off because that just a big blast. But
man,
there's just they buried stuff everywhere. So when that deployment. You weren't injured. That went all right.
Oh yeah, that deployment. That was fine. Nothing really major happened. I think there was one guy took one pot shot out at one of our convoys, and that was the only fighting. So while I was physically safe, I wasn't entirely satisfied. That I didn't join the Marine Corps to not fight, so I was kind of unsatisfied with that deployment. And then shortly after we got back, my unit. Word got out that we were going to be sending a volunteer platoon to Afghanistan. And if you recall, Afghanistan at that point was picking back up in terms of the fighting because a lot of the resources have been shifted over to Iraq. So Afghanistan was kicking back off. So I volunteered for that deployment again, and that was the one that I got wounded. We were doing I was with 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, and we were doing a push into a place called Sangin, Afghanistan. And there were all sorts of IEDs out there because we took over from the British that had the area, and the British weren't really doing much in terms of patrolling or securing the area. They just kind of had a bunch of bases they set up. They kind of stayed in their patrol bases, and the Taliban kind of just had the running area. So there was tons of IEDs out there. And that was my primary role in Afghanistan, as opposed to, instead of finding weapons caches, because there weren't really any weapons caches to find, the Taliban was using homemade explosives, which is just they take some fertilizer, turn it into ammonium nitrate, and just put it in those big yellow jugs, and they make blasting caps out of big pens, half a big pen or whatever, put some TATP and that stuff in for the blasting cap. I'm telling you stuff you already know, but just for the audience. And then they would wire that into a PERT plus bottle for the pressure plate. So, and then a 9-volt battery. So that's what they would make these things. And so that was my primary role in Afghanistan, was instead of finding weapons caches, I was doing more foot mobile route clearance and just clearing pathways across areas that we were pretty certain there was going to be an IED in there somewhere.
Oh yeah. Well, we were in, this was, when was this? It was 2009?
This is 2010. Yeah.
10?
So we got there in April of 2010, and I was wounded in July of 2010.
Yeah. Just about a year later, I was just down the road in Kandahar province. This is a raid district. Yeah. And very similar. It was just all pressure plates, all homemade explosive, the oil jugs. and not much direct contact, pot shots, pot shots, and then just littered with IEDs everywhere.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the incident in particular, because you often were, like you said, route clearance. And was this mounted, dismounted? Were you doing?
So dismounted route. So it's kind of, I know route clearance, when you say that, typically what that means is, a route clearance unit where they have all the vehicles and they have the Buffalo and the Husky with the metal detector and that kind of stuff. And it's kind of a set, they clear roads. So they clear routes. But I use that term just to mean that it's the same exact thing, except it's just a small route. So what I was doing, I was attached to just an infantry platoon. So I would be a combat engineer and I would just be inserted with a squad of infantry as they went out on their mission. And in the same way that a corpsman would be, they would take their corpsman out with them. They would take their combat engineer out with them. And the routes that I was clearing were what you would call a danger area. So areas where we felt confident there was going to be an IED. And a good example would be going over a bridge. So if we were going to go to the north and there was a river to the north of us, we would have to cross that river. Well, we're not going to put on 90 pounds of gear and then try and swim across a river. We're going to have to use that bridge. And the Taliban would know that we would have to use that bridge. So they would put their IEDs around the mouth of the bridge. And of course, we knew that they knew that we were going to use that bridge. So as we approached that bridge, we'd go, this is a spot where there is a good chance there's going to be an IED. So I would go across first with a metal detector and I would find a safe path. I would usually mark it with chem lights. And then when we got to the other side, and as long as my fellow Marines walked along, followed those chem lights that I laid out, they knew they wouldn't be stepping on an IED. We get to the other side, we continue on with the mission. And you would see that in a lot of different areas. So going over a bridge, going into a building, doorways, that kind of stuff. And so anytime we got to an area where we were pretty sure there was going to be an IED, I would go through first, find the safe path, and then everybody would follow me. And that's kind of what I was doing over there. So when I got wounded, July 22nd, 2010 is the date, we were doing a mission where we were going to essentially move our entire battalion to the north and seize all sorts of compounds. We were just taking over Taliban territory that day. And my squad and we were patrolling along the outside of this vehicle column. And around 1 o'clock that day, we halted, took a break, did a little coordination with all the other units that were in the area, all the other companies. And then we stepped out. And maybe within 10 seconds of stepping out, our point man stepped on an IED. Now, luckily for him, the IED malfunctioned because, as I'm sure you know, when the Taliban was making their explosives, sometimes they wouldn't do a very good job of it, or the container that they were using would leak. So the explosive would essentially be rendered inert by the elements or just for whatever reason. So the blasting cap exploded in it, but nothing else. So it didn't detonate the ammonium nitrate. But that is a time where we are about 100% confident that there's going to be an IED in there somewhere, because they would, bury them in clusters, because they knew that when one guy was wounded, we would all come and try and help him. And so they figured, all right, we're going to bury one here, one over here, in order to make sure that the people that go to help that person will also step on IEDs. So they build them little mini minefields, basically. You can kind of picture it like that, little minefields of IEDs. So that meant if somebody steps on one IED, almost a guarantee there's going to be another one. So I stepped forward in order to find a safe path through that area and got out my metal detector, started waving it back and forth in front of me. And it was making some noises, but nothing I really figured was dangerous. And unfortunately, in a split second, I go from waving my metal detector to, on my back screaming.
Yeah, the description of the moment, right as you were injured, and that, what is it, like a detached sense where they're just screaming. you don't know, you almost don't even recognize that it's you.
Yeah, I mean, it was the way I would describe it is it was sort of like my conscious mind had been retracted all the way back and kind of put into this little cave. It was being protected. And so I had awareness. My ears were still working, my eyes were still working. So I had awareness of what was happening, but I wasn't telling my body, inhale as much air as you possibly can and then project outwardly as loudly as I wasn't telling my body to do anything. It was just my body was doing it and my senses were there, but they were kind of being protected. They were just, witnessing what was happening. But I didn't have any control. I didn't have any conscious control over anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that lasted for probably about 30 seconds. And in that time, even though I had very little conscious control, I intrinsically knew what had happened. I knew I had stepped on an IED. And 30 seconds go by. All I can hear is screaming. All I can see is, a blurry tunnel. And at the end of it was, the sky. And then as time goes on, I can start to feel more things. I can smell the dust. I can smell, that chemical stench of an explosion. I don't know how to describe it besides that. Yeah, just, how you blow something up and then you go in afterwards and you can just kind of smell the explosives in the air. And so I smelled that. So I knew there'd been an explosion. I knew all these things. Eventually, I could feel my legs, and my legs felt like they'd kind of like when you fall asleep on your arm and you're sleeping on it for a couple hours. Eventually, your arm starts to hurt, starts to throb. It felt like that, except magnified by 100 times or something like that. And so all the stuff told me that I had stepped on an IED. And then just as time went on, the endorphins got into my bloodstream, and I slowly regained more and more control over myself. And then shortly after that, my fellow Marines got to me. Corpsman came over, gave me the morphine. They put tourniquets on, and at that point, I was able to talk and reason and consider. And I started thinking about what's my future going to look like now after this. And I assumed, Marine Corps is gone. I liked working out and being active. I figured, well, that's not going to be able to happen anymore. I'm going to be in a wheelchair forever. I'm not going to be able to do anything. My mom's going to have to take care of me like I'm a baby. And so I just asked those guys, hey, I don't want to live like this. Just shoot me, man. Just kill me. And of course they're like, no.
Didn't you have the forethought, I can handle below the knee, but if it's above the knee, no, I quit.
Yeah, that was interesting because I had thought about that. Going into that deployment, when you're a combat engineer and your job is to find IEDs, there's a good chance that you're going to step on one, or there's, higher chance than a lot of other people. So I had thought that before. I went, well, I kind of figure as long as I have my knees, I'd probably be good. But above knee, no thanks. I'd rather be dead. Now, I didn't know what the level of amputation was at. I mean, they actually told me that it was below the knee. They looked at it and they went, we think it's below the knee. Because I asked them because I had that awareness. But then, so they refused. They loaded me up onto a stretcher. They carried the stretcher to a tank, and then I got another injection, and that's when I went unconscious again. And I wake up for a couple of days after that.
You were back in the States. You went to Walter Reed, Bethesda.
First time I woke up was Germany. And then I woke up in Germany for about, 20 minutes or something like that. And then next stop was Bethesda.
It's crazy.
When I woke up again.
When I woke up in Germany, and they were wheeling me out to the aircraft to hop across the Atlantic, one of the nurses said, "You want to meet Tom Cruise?" And I swear I was hallucinating. Tom Cruise. So he's on a tour promoting his latest Mission Impossible. He's here shaking hands and stuff. Okay, that's super weird.
Did you meet him?
Did you? But I did, losing my eyesight, I actually experienced some hallucinations.
Oh, yeah.
when you got to, like, when you actually got that time to sit back and think, yeah, because it's pretty much a whirlwind once you're injured. Everything's all this craziness going on, transportation, medical, the doctors and nurses and everybody's working on you. It's kind of like combat where you don't get to really digest what's going on immediately.
Right.
What were some of the thoughts going through your mind?
Well, yeah, like you said, I mean, the first week, the first thoughts that I had actually occurred in Germany, even though I was barely conscious. I recognized that my mom was going to be extremely up. She was going to be crushed when she found out what happened. She probably already had at that point, but that was the one thought that I had in Germany. So I asked my nurse to try and find me a funny hat or something, because the way I was figuring it, if I got back and I came out of the ambulance wearing a funny hat or something, my mom would probably laugh, and maybe that would help her a little bit. And they didn't get me one. I don't think a funny hat existed in that hospital, but I guess word got out somehow. And so my mom had a hat for me when I got back. She had a pirate hat for me. And, so it didn't happen in the way that I intended it to happen. But I think just by the request and by my mom finding out about it, essentially what I was trying to say to her was, I'm going to be okay. You don't need to worry about me. And so I think that was just the first little step on the path to recovery right there. But then the rest of that week is probably a lot like your experience, where it was just hallucination. Am I hallucinating laying there in the hospital bed? Nurse, doctor, just all this stuff. But it was a lot of surgeries, a lot of hallucinations, not good hallucinations either, very violent and nightmarish hallucinations for the first week. Mm-hmm. And then after that was over, after I was more stable and I got moved up to the post-surgical ward, then I was able to start thinking. And basically at that point, I was starting to think about, all right, well, they didn't kill me, so I'm alive. I still want to do something fun. I still want to, have meaning. I want to do something meaningful. And so that I think I just started thinking about, well, what can I do now? How can I make both those things happen?
That's funny. Is that part of maybe your upbringing or the Marines, where that adapt and overcome mentality, where I'm not going to cry about it. I'm going to figure out what I can do.
I don't know, man. I think it's probably a combination of all the above. I think the Marine Corps definitely played a massive role in it, because what's the one thing the first thing you learn as a Marine is you don't matter anymore. And the second thing is you don't quit until the mission's complete. And so I think the combination of those two things, or mostly the second one, I've still got a mission. Mm-hmm. My mission is to have a good life. And I think that probably intrinsically, if there's any genetic predisposition I have that benefits me, it's the ability to accept a situation and move on. This is what happened. That's happened. Okay, what can we do with it? I probably had, maybe I have some sort of intrinsic ability, or maybe insanity, to do that. But I don't remember a whole lot of feeling depressed, for lack of a better term, after my injury. That's not to say that I didn't recognize that it wasn't what I wanted to happen in my life, and I wasn't, kind of bummed that it happened. Those things were true. And and it doesn't mean that I didn't feel frustrations about my situation from time to time, but I didn't spend any sort of significant period of time feeling that way. It would just be a quick acknowledgement. Yeah, this sucks. And then, it's kind of like, well, okay, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to keep moving forward.
I didn't spend a whole lot of time at Walter Reed, maybe a month and a half. I got hit in the head, which was like the best place for me to get hit. Really thick.
Right.
But after they patched me up, there wasn't really anything for me, them to do. So they sent me to the blind.
Yeah, there's no therapy, right?
What's that?
There wasn't a long period of, learning how to use prosthetics, what you would call therapy afterwards. It's just like, you either have eyes or you don't.
Well, my training was at the blind rehab, the blind rehabilitation, blind school. But there, I met a guy named Brad Snyder. There's a fellow EOD.
Oh, yeah. Swimmer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him.
He was only about 6 months ahead of me, but he'd gone blind also from an IED. And this was late 2011, early 2012. And I was at the blind rehab, and every morning we'd have breakfast. He's like, "Hey man, I'm going out to the pool and do some laps. You want to come with me?" He was dedicated. He was training for Paralympics.
All right.
He was a Navy guy, diver. I, on the other hand, and blowing out eardrums. I'm like, man, I got to put cotton balls to just get in the shower. But anyways, same thing, right? That you're still in the hospital, and you've decided that you weren't just going to stay fit. When did you set the target on the Paralympics?
Yeah. Well, after I got to the 5th floor, I had a lot of time to just kind of sit there in the hospital bed and hang out. And I was going to PT every day. And I think through those first PT sessions, I went, oh, I can still work out. I can still exercise. Look at all this stuff I can still do. And I remember I asked them one day in the clinic if they had a pull-up bar anywhere. And they said, I think there's one in the, this closet over here. And so I wheeled over to the closet with all this, all these things attached to me, the wound vac machines, catheters, all the tubes coming off. And I did a set of, 15 pull-ups or something on that bar. And I realized, oh, okay, I can still work out. And so after that, I went back to my bed and got out my laptop, and I just went, I Googled whatever, disabled working out or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the Paralympics popped up. That's when I looked into that, and what sports? What was the Paralympics? What sports are in the Paralympics? Oh, rowing. Oh, I remember rowing was really hard in the gym. Getting on the concept too. That's a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always seeking, hard workouts to do. And I was like, oh, when are the Paralympics? 2012. Oh, it's 2010. Maybe I can go to the Paralympics. Maybe I can learn how to row and do the Paralympics. And at that point, I hadn't decided or anything that I was going to go, but that possibility, started materializing in my mind. And as I got further and further into physical therapy, I started thinking about it more and more and more until eventually, I looked up, is there a place where I can learn, how do I go to the Paralympics? Well, you gotta, I looked up all the qualifications and all this stuff and looked up a place where I could row. There was just so happened to be a place in DC that was close by. And it also just so happened that the coach of that program was a Navy veteran and would come into the hospital from time to time. And I remember I was wheeling home from physical therapy, and he was sat out under the veranda at Walter Reed with a rowing machine. And I went, oh, I want to learn how to row. And he went, well, hop on this rowing machine and row a 1K. And, I completely did not pace it at all. And I blew up, and probably took me like 6 minutes because I exploded in the first minute and a half. And he went, well, whenever you're ready, you can come on out and learn how to row on the water. And I went, sounds good. And so that started that whole process right there. And, by the time I ended physical therapy, we had convinced the clinic to move a Concept 2 rowing machine into the clinic so I could do my sessions and everything. I was going on the water Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I would do a training session on the Concept 2. He would come in on Tuesday and Thursday. The further I got in, the more and more that vision started to materialize and become a possibility and something I wanted to commit to.
There's something funny about the coach for the U.S. Paralympic team scouting for fresh recruits at Yeah,
It's a great
Walter
place,
Reed.
man.
Like
It's a great place to look for some recruits.
so you go where there's a fresh crop, like
Yeah,
the
man.
upcoming, athletes in the Paralympic arena. That's pretty funny.
It's
But
what benefits both parties. I mean, because hey, it gives you something to strive for when you're in physical therapy, and yeah, man, it's a lot of fresh meat. A lot of fresh meat for the Paralympics there.
you're sick. No, were you surprised by anything after losing your legs? What was possible? The potential, like what was available out there? Because when you were doing the Googling certain things, learning, you weren't.
Oh no, surprised. I guess I don't know if I was surprised in this. I guess so. If I'm thinking about what I thought being an amputee was like at site of injury and in the first week, was significantly different from how it ended up being. I assumed wheelchair forever, but I come to learn prosthetics are very advanced and you can be wheelchair free if you work hard enough and if you have the right kind of level of injury, which I did. But then also during that first month and a half, 6 weeks in the hospital, I thought I might be able to do a lot more stuff than what prosthetics really allows you to do. And so I guess I kind of went from thinking I couldn't do anything on one side to thinking I could do everything on this side. And then by the time I graduated or whatever, retired, I had a very realistic picture of what are the capabilities or what are some of the things that probably not going to be able to jump that well ever again, that kind of thing. And so I wouldn't necessarily say I was surprised, but I certainly learned a lot about the truth about what it's like to be a double above knee amputee.
Well, I'm sure you went through maybe in the initial, like right at the beginning, go through that. I can't do this anymore. I'll never be able to do that again. And when I went through my Google search moment, and when I it's a little bit later because I had to learn how to use the accessibility on my phone or computer, or whatever. But people also like coming in and saying, "Hey, you want to go for a bike ride?" I'm like, "Don't mess with me." Yeah. And I had no idea that like blind tandem racing was really serious.
Yeah.
And somebody said, "You want to go golfing?" I'm like, "Come on." I could do that when I could see. But like that sounds just stupid. But it turns out there's actually 2 national associations for blind golf. They're that serious. Anyways.
Dang, dude.
I was a little surprised. I was in that I can't mindset, but it was people around me. It was what I was finding out on the internet. These people that were accomplishing incredible stuff. And I just, I'm going to get around people who have the right mindset. Also, being in Walter Reed, there's no want of just wounded, broken. I don't like saying wounded warrior. I like re-engineered experts, recalibrated carnivores.
Re-engineered, I like that.
Joking around. So sometimes pretty sick jokes. The kind of stuff that makes civilians go, "Oh, clutch of pearls." But it helps. It's a release valve. I'm sure you experience that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do that. So to your first point, after I left Afghanistan, I didn't really have much of an I can't mentality after that. It was more of a let's find out kind of mentality. Let's see what I can do. Hey, you want to go for a bike ride? I'd like to. Let's see if I can do it. I mean, and I learned how to ride a bicycle. I think that was one of the coolest things I did in therapy was become one of the only double above knee amputees that can ride a regular bicycle with no assistance. And so I learned how to do that in physical therapy. But I never really had much of a I can't do that mentality. It was always I don't know if I can do that, but let's go see what we can figure out. And that was definitely benefited by having a prosthetist that was all about trying to engineer different kinds of legs for me and that kind of stuff, and having a physical therapy team that was open to, with that mindset too. Let's figure it out. And yeah, I mean, to your point about having to have a sense of humor, I mean, it's a necessity. I mean, if you go through tragic circumstances or difficult circumstances like that, and you just stay serious the entire time, you're not going to have a good time. So you have to be able to laugh at yourself. You have to be able to crack a joke. Like you said, it's a release valve. So I was always trying to be funny, always trying to say funny things and laugh at stuff that I knew I could laugh at.
Yeah, it's like the pirate hat. I was thinking was your version of, was it Jason Redman's poster board, Act of Defiance? All right. I'm not going to get too serious about this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that.
All right, so you rowing. You started training for that, and how did you qualify?
Yeah, so the way that you qualify is you just go to what's called trials. And so my boat class was a double, mixed gender double. So the first thing I had to do was find a rowing partner, female, that classified for my classification. And that's one of the things that the physical therapy clinics in the military are missing, is a lot of wounded females. They exist, but there aren't nearly as many as there are men. So there wasn't anybody in the clinic, but my rowing partner, or my rowing coach, he knew of a young lady named Oksana Masters that was rowing in Louisville, Kentucky, that was looking for a partner and was very driven to go to the Paralympics as well. So we all met up in DC, went for a row together, seemed to fit well, in terms of our rowing capabilities and rowing styles. And that was maybe 4 months before it was time for me to retire. And I think we, had a conversation at one point, and I said, well, I want to go to the Paralympics. Do you want to go to the Paralympics? She said, yes. And at that point we went, all right, we're going to do it. So the way that you qualify for the Paralympics is, the first thing we had to do was win U.S. rowing trials. So they host a race every year, and whoever wins that race gets to represent the United States in all the races, all the international races for that year. So that was in March of 2012. So we had about 3 months to get ready for that race. So we went down to Florida and started training, 6 days a week, twice a day, trained for that, won that race. And the next thing is you have to qualify your boat for the Paralympics. So at that point, there were 12 spots available. 9 of the spots had been taken. There were 3 more spots to go. And so what we had to do was fly out to Serbia to what was called the final Paralympic qualifier. It was the final race. The top 3 boats in that race were the final 3 spots for the Paralympics. So we had to get top 3. We won that race. So that got us our spot in the Paralympics. And from that point, it was just training in Charlottesville, Virginia at the UVA Boathouse to get to the Paralympics, which is in September. Went out to the Paralympics and managed to get bronze.
And how'd you perform at the Paralympics?
Yeah, we did well. I mean, we won. We lost our first race, and then our second race we won. And the third race, which was the final, we placed third. So we got a bronze medal in the Paralympics. And I think we pulled ahead of the Great British boat in the last maybe 100 meters. We beat them by 0.2 of a second to get that bronze medal. And yeah, it was amazing.
I heard the least favorite, or the least wanted countries or teams placed ahead of you. And which race was that?
Oh,
I think you got some jabs from some of your friends back home.
My buddies said don't lose to France or China, and those were the 2 countries that beat us.
And it was China was first, France was second.
Yeah, China won, France came second, and we came third. But hey, man, we only had 9 months to train, and those guys have been training together for 4 years. So, give me and Oksana another year, we probably would have won that race. But Yeah, we did what we could with what we had. And the best thing about the Paralympics was I met my wife, Pam. I met her. She was rowing for Great Britain there. She won gold in her race, and met her in a bar outside of the athletes village. So that's probably the best thing that happened at the Paralympics.
That's cool.
Yeah,
come back with a medal and a girlfriend. Not bad.
Yeah, well, obviously we didn't start dating at the Paralympics or anything, but we met, and it took a while for us to, because she lived in Great Britain, so we had to do long distance. The place called Henley-on-Thames. It's about an hour away from London to the west.
Gotcha.
Yeah, man.
So okay, how did that relationship unfold?
Yeah, so we met and we kind of hit it off in England, but I was only there for a week, and then she was planning to come to the United States with her sister to go to New York for a little post-Paralympics trip. And I just suggested that maybe I should come up and meet up with her, and maybe I could show her around Washington, D.C. as well after her sister went home. And she said she thought that was a great idea. So we spent about 10 days together then, and then she went home, and we liked each other enough that she came out for another 2 months later on in the year, and we spent a lot more time together. And she went home after that again, and we still weren't together or anything, but just over the course of that next year, we kind of wrestled back and forth with, the fact that we were people in two different countries, and, what that kind of a relationship would look like, and decided by, the end of that year that, yeah, let's go ahead and go for it and be a couple and see where it goes.
That's terrific.
So that happened in 2013. Yeah. And then we did 4 years of long distance dating, England to America, a lot of flying back and forth, and then got married in 2017. And she moved over here.
That's great. As far as the athletics go, once you did Paralympics, what was it? You reached a certain accomplishment, or how do you would describe it? Like a personal growth transformation, where it was, you say you battled back from injury, and you reached a personal accomplishment, and then you went beyond that, right? You started, for one, it wasn't just rowing. You got into triathlons, cycling, but it was less about you and more about turning your efforts outward. Can you tell me about what sparked that?
Yeah, I think the Paralympics was more about me kind of proving to myself, if I had to go back and psychoanalyze. It's just something that I wanted to do, something I was interested in doing when it came right down to it. But I think in an intangible way, from a deeper psychological way, it was probably about me proving to myself and to the people that cared about me that I could still have a good life. That's what it really proved. That's what it really showed, is I could come back from this injury and still do great things. And going to the Paralympics proved that. But at the same time, rowing, it was about me. It was about, showing what I could do. And I knew deep down it wasn't really going to be something that would satisfy me long term. And so, shortly after the Paralympics, or even before the Paralympics even, I knew that my time in rowing was going to be limited, because it just didn't feel satisfying on a greater scale, in the same way that being in the Marine Corps and fighting bad guys was satisfying. I didn't feel like it was going to make a huge difference in the world. So I started thinking about other things that I could do. And I figured maybe I could ride my bike across the country and raise money for veteran charities. Maybe that would be something that was fulfilling. But really, that bike ride was still kind of more about me still, because it was mostly about how far can I push myself? How far can I go? How big of a challenge can I take on? Because rowing is one thing, but at the end of the day, you just go back to it's just training twice a day. And then at the end of the day, you go back to your house and you kind of hang, and you eat really good food, and you're comfortable. You're in your air conditioning, you're in your heat, and you have a nice bed to sleep on. But riding across the country is a completely different thing. There's no break from it. You just have to do it every single day. And sometimes you got to eat not so good food. You got to sleep on a cot, you got to do all these things. And so I wanted to know how far could I push myself, and could I do something that nobody had ever done before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finished the second rowing season in 2013, and a couple months later, hopped on my bicycle in Bar Harbor, Maine, and started riding. And I had my little brother, Steve, was driving a box truck behind me that we had kind of retrofitted into be a little camper, and rode 30, 35 miles a day for 181 days, and finished in Camp Pendleton, California. Raised about 125 grand for a few nonprofits that I had come into contact with, Semper Fi Fund being one of them.
That sounds like an adventure. It sounds fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, I could write a whole book about that, but that's kind of that's the cliff notes for you.
All right. Yeah, you're the panel truck with a box truck with a couple cots in the back.
Luckily,
your brother.
Luckily, we didn't have to sleep in that for very, very often, because my communications team, my media team, got really good at calling ahead of where I was going to be and convincing hotels to let us stay there for the night. So it was really the first month that we still slept in it a lot. By the time we got through that first month, we were mostly in hotels for the rest of the time.
Yeah,
which was cool.
I mean, what time of year was that?
I started in October and I finished in April. So I crossed the Colorado Rockies in February, which was a lot of fun.
I hope you had a lot of covers in there.
I had a lot of clothes I was wearing on a daily basis.
When did you weren't in a recumbent, like a hand bike? This was an upright. Yeah,
standard bicycle. I wanted to do it on a regular. I wanted to be able to ride a regular bicycle. That was my mission when I was running when I was in physical therapy, was to ride a regular bike. And yeah, I think part of that was probably ego of not wanting to have to resort to a recumbent or a hand cycle. So there's some ego involved there, and also a little bit of a challenge, because my hero in physical therapy was a guy named Dan Kanassen, who was a Navy SEAL, and he was a double above knee amputee, and he was trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. So I saw him doing it, and I went, yeah, what's the story with that? I want to learn how to ride a bike. And he went, well, nobody can really do it. Nobody knows how to do it here, and nobody really does it. And so I kind of saw that as a little bit of a challenge too. So it's kind of satisfied two things: my competitive nature, and also that challenge of trying to figure something else that nobody figured out how to do.
When did the month of marathons happen? When did that come along?
That was in 2017. So I finished the bike ride 2014 in April, and at that point I didn't really know what I was going to do after that. I was thinking either a career in stand-up comedy or maybe try and make the Paralympics again in triathlon. Ultimately, I decided to go for triathlon, partly because Pam was still training for rowing. I was going to go to the Paralympics in 2016. And so I kind of wanted to stay in that environment so that maybe you could go to the Paralympics again together. And unfortunately, I kind of bit off a little bit more than I could chew, because there's several different categories in triathlon that you can compete in. There's one that's kind of designed for a double above knee amputee, in which you ride a hand cycle and the run is in a racing wheelchair. And like I said before, my ego would not allow me to do that. And so, besides that, I spent all this time learning how to run with running prostheses and learning how to ride a bicycle. And I had just finished riding across the country on a regular bicycle. So I wasn't going to then revert over to this other thing. And I kind of figured the problem with me competing in that category is I would have to compete against people that had one fully intact leg. And as you might suspect, they had a massive advantage over me on the swim and the bike. But I just figured I could outwork them and overcome that. But unfortunately, they worked as hard as I did, and I was not able to overcome that. And they crushed me on the swim. They crushed me on the bike. But then the run came around, and I was able to – that's when I got my little bit of time back. I was always crushing them on the run. I got my 5K was 18 minutes. And at that point, I remembered that I had always been kind of a good runner, in run club in elementary school. And then in the Marine Corps, I got a good PFT score with very little training. And as I was calling it quits on triathlon, I was thinking about what I needed to do next. And I figured, well, maybe I should do another fundraiser. I've got some time here. And I figured, all right, maybe what I should do is run a bunch of marathons, because what I noticed in the intervening years between retiring and 2016 was that, and you can tell me if you noticed this too, is that it seemed like the perception around veterans had been shifting from 2001, 2003. We were all the noble heroes, strong, impenetrable mind heroes. And then by the time 2016 rolled around, we were all broken heroes now. Every veteran character I saw in a movie or a TV show or in news stories, or even all the songs that were about veterans, are all about how we were on the edge of implosion, constantly haunted by what we had seen in war. And I looked at that and I went, that's the only story that you hear about veterans now, is that we're all just these broken, heroic still, but broken because we went overseas and we saw war. And I looked back at my story and I went, that's not me. And that's not the vast majority of people that I know. That's not Aaron. I know that. And I didn't want to be seen as a victim. I didn't want my friends to be seen as a victim, and I didn't want veterans to be seen as victims. So the way that I took ownership of that was I went out, I said, well, what can I do? I can do something so ridiculously crazy sounding that the story will have to be covered. There's no way that I'm going to do something so crazy that news organizations will hear about it and be absolutely compelled to want to tell that story. And that's how I can start to shift that perception back, by showing people that just because I went overseas and I got wounded and lost both my legs, that doesn't mean that I'm destroyed. I'm broken now. What that means is I can actually become stronger because of that injury. And so that was the kind of the mindset that went into it. And I said, all right, how do I do that? How about I take this thing that I can do, which is running, and I have a natural talent for, and I do something with that, because most people don't expect amputees to be able to run, let alone run a marathon, let alone a double above knee amputee running a marathon, let alone run 31 marathons back, or a bunch of marathons back to back. Most able-bodied people don't think they could, they don't think they could run a marathon. And most able-bodied people don't think they could run another one the next day. So if I knew if I did that, then it would just blow people's minds and they would have to pay attention to it. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to do a full month of marathons, which mean, longest month, 31 days. So I did 31 back to back, and I decided to do it around in all the different 31 of the biggest cities in the country. So we would just get as many eyeballs on the story as possible.
Did you run official marathons, or was this one of those things where you get to a city?
Yeah, I would get to a city. So, for example, my first one was London. And so Pam, who was running the whole operation, my wife Pam, she was running the whole operation. She was in charge. Me, her, and some of her family over there, we all showed up at this one spot in Hyde Park, which is kind of like Central Park in New York, in Hyde Park. And at 7:00, we had a big group of runners, because I had put the word out that we were going to be there. We had a big group of runners, and I went, here we go. I gave a little speech, and we started running. And I just ran loops of Hyde Park until I reached 26.2 miles. And then same exact thing on all the other ones. I would either post up at a trail and run 2.5 kilometers one direction and back, 2.5 kilometers the other direction and back. So I'm always kind of coming back to my central base, the RV. And I did it that way because I didn't want to have to carry water. It's a lot logistically so much easier. I didn't have to map out a 26.2 mile circuitous route through a city and have the RV drive in behind me and all these things. Also, it made it easier if people wanted to join me, they could just show up to where the RV was, wait for me to return, and then just hop in. And so a lot of different reasons why I did that. And also one of the more important ones, as you know, as an endurance runner, I was close to a bathroom. I wanted to make sure I was very close to a bathroom at all times, just in case. And so that's when we did it, and raised So that's how I would do it. And then I would start running at 7, finish usually within 6 hours. I'd be done, and then hop in the RV, do any interviews, hop in the RV, drive to the next city. And most of the cities were between 6 to 8 hours away. The longest drive I think we did was 14 hours. We did that a couple times from Salt Lake to Seattle.
The rowing, that's more of like a sprint, right? And
yeah, it was a 4-minute sprint.
And then the bike ride across the country, that's a long distance, but you get to break it up. You get to rest, and either a cot in a box truck, panel truck, or hotel in the evening. But marathons, 26.2 every single day for a month. That's a whole different level of endurance. Was there any point in this endeavor where you were thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it through the next few miles or make it to the next marathon?
There was no real point. There's always, even from the very beginning, there was always this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. As a part of my training, as you know, from your experience, I did a portion of the challenge. I did 5 marathons back to back, and it was relatively, I don't want to say it was easy, but it felt really doable. Mm-hmm. And, and I sat down, I was like, well, yeah, 5, but I'm trying to do 31. So there's a lot of marathons between 5 and 31. And then also it was a logistical thing too. I had to be in a new city every day. So that was the challenge. It wasn't just run 31 marathons back to back. It was do it in a different city every single day. So, hey, right. What if a flight gets canceled? What if RV breaks down? That kind of stuff. And also, what if I trip? What if my prosthetic breaks and I fall down and I hurt myself, or I injure myself? So that created the only time where it felt pretty uncertain was the last 4 marathons. I was already really tired. I was already in a lot of pain. And in Nashville, I slipped on a wooden bridge, fell, and did something to my back. And for the last 4, it's like Atlanta, Charlotte, Baltimore, DC. Yeah, the last 4 marathons, it was like you fall down. It's like you pinch something in your back, and every time you step, it's like that. It pinches every single step. And so, I had to deal with that for the last 4 marathons. 100,000 steps.
A bridge?
Yeah, man. No,
a bridge. Fell on you?
No, a bridge.
Oh, a bridge.
I was running across. Yeah, I was running across a wooden bridge, and I slipped. It was wet, and I slipped on the bridge.
Oh, okay. I thought you said. Yeah. I thought you said like a tree branch fell on you.
Oh, no.
Talking about bad luck.
Yeah, I know. Talking about time. Yeah, so the last 4 marathons was like that.
I've done a few back-to-back. There are a couple like race organizations, race directors that actually go from one state to the next and set up like traffic cones in a park or something, and you do a 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles loops, and it's official. And we did Arkansas and Louisiana. And you just drive over the border the next day and run a marathon. And then
cool.
But you're hopping, you were like England and then Atlanta.
Yeah, the first one, was from England. And then the next one was in Philadelphia.
Did you plan it out so the travel time was reduced, like Philadelphia?
Yeah, so that was part of the mapping, was to make sure that I could actually make it to the next city. Mm-hmm. I looked at the map and I went, all right, I got to go London. London to Philadelphia wasn't that big of a deal because it's a 7-hour flight, but you gain 5 hours in the time change. So it was really only a 2-hour loss of time.
Yeah, but you're chasing the sun too, so at least you got the time zone on your side.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then, I looked at the map of the cities I wanted to run in, and I went, all right, I got to go Philly. I got to go Philly to New York to Boston, Boston, Toronto to Detroit. And all these cities are, within 4 to 6 hours of each other. So it's not a huge it's not a huge ask to make it from Philly to New York and in time for a marathon the next day, because it's a short drive.
So, what happened after that accomplishment? What do you do? Like, where do you go from there? Or are you working also at this time and now?
No,
are you
that
like
was
a
it.
full-time amateur athlete?
No, so I mean, during the time I was doing the month, that was all I was doing. Doing the bike ride, all that stuff. That was all I was just surviving off of my, my military disability pension and retirement to do these things and fund these things. I funded all of them except the month marathons. I got a little help from Semper Fi Fund and the Coalition of Salute America's Heroes. They paid for the RV because that was a pretty big investment. But other than that, I bought all the food. I funded the entire thing, and so that's all I was doing. And then after the month of marathons, as you might suspect, I got enough media attention that certain people started reaching out to me to come tell my story, talk about myself. And Speakers Bureau reached out to me and asked me to start speaking with them. And so that's kind of what I did. I started doing that, and I did that for a while. But in 2016, I was able to, Jocko had me on the podcast to talk about my story. And then he had me on again after the month of marathons. And that's when I met Jocko. And then right now what I do for work is I work as a leadership instructor for Jocko's company, Echelon Front. And so I go around the country teaching leadership and teaching the principles that he wrote about, him and Leif wrote about in Extreme Ownership, the book. But the pathway to that was going on the podcast and then just kind of knowing him and then going out to some of their events. And eventually I went out to an event that's close to my house called Gettysburg or Echelon Front Battlefield, where we go through the battlefield at Gettysburg and talk about leadership through the lens of that battle. And I was talking to Leif about some of the struggles with building a motivational speaking career, which I'm sure you have experienced yourself. It's challenging to do it by yourself, and you're under the impression that a Speakers Bureau is going to just book you stuff, and they don't. You have to take a lot of you have to take the proactive mindset towards booking your own things. And I was just talking about how I was working on figuring that out, and Leif said, well, why don't you check out what we're doing at Echelon Front? We're looking for another instructor. And I said, well, if you're gonna offer me the dream job, then I'm gonna go ahead and take you up on that. And they plugged me in. They started having me out to some events so I could learn the ropes. And yeah, now I'm a full-time leadership instructor at Echelon Front. And it's fantastic because now I get to continue to help people and continue to make an impact in the world, teaching people lessons and skills that save people's lives. I mean, save marriages, save people's lives, and just set people on a trajectory for their life that puts them on this pathway that they can accomplish anything and have a better life than they ever thought possible. And so I get to do that for a living. And then on the side, I've got, not on the side, but on the side, I'm still, exercising and working out and running and that kind of thing. But I've got 2 kids. I'm married to Pam. We live in Middleburg. She's a farmer. I've got 2 kids. Harry's 5 and my daughter Pepper's 1.5. And those are the 2 things I do now. I have my family and I do my work with Echelon Front. And
that's so fun with the kids. I love being a dad. It's so great.
Yeah, man. It's the best. I mean, that
is your daughter, she daddy's girl yet? Too young?
Obviously she's 1.5, so she still prefers, mama. I mean, I would say, Harry probably still prefers mom too, but now, yeah, definitely. I get one of the best things about what I do for a living is I get to spend a lot of time at home. I have to go on the road to teach workshops and stuff, but I work from home for the most part. I spend a lot of my time at home, and so I can be with the kids pretty much all the time. And that's what I want to do. I want to build these kids and help them, just get the best life that they possibly can. And if I can use my experiences to help make that happen, that's what I'm going to do.
That's great. Any big goals on the horizon? What are you most excited for coming up?
Hopefully I'm going to have a memoir about this story coming out in November. I'll keep you posted on that. Jocko's company is going to be publishing it, so it's in the final stages of editing. Don't have a release date or anything, but they're going to release that, so I'll let you know. Send you a copy. Okay, hold on. I'll just see if I can get a Braille copy. Or I don't know, maybe the audiobook. Maybe I'll also need the audiobook. And let's see that. Continuing to teach leadership with Echelon Front. But I do think it would be cool to be able to return at some point when I can put a little bit more time into training, return to endurance. I think it would be cool to set the world record for something like, most miles run by a double above knee amputee in 24 hours, or maybe shortest time to run 100 miles or something like that. I want to set a standard for a double above knee amputee running that hasn't been set before. I know Richard Whitehead he's got marathons covered. He's run a marathon in maybe 2.5 hours. So he's a guy that set the standard there. But I think my whole thing isn't necessarily speed. It's not necessarily being really skilled in anything. It's just not quitting and just continue to move forward. And so I think ultra endurance is kind of my deal. And so I would like to set a standard there in terms of,
but those what do they call them? The blade legs. Those things are like cheating.
There's some discussion on that about whether or not it's actually gives you an advantage over a human foot. And hey, man, I've read a lot of the science, and I'm like, they kind of have a point in some ways. I don't know that above the knee prosthesis would give you any advantage, but hey, man. There's a reason that when you see a long jumper that is a single above knee amputee, when you see them jump, they take off for the jump off of their prosthetic limb. So there's I'd say that there's something to that concept, and maybe there is certain advantageous parts to it. Now, I don't know if that carries over to what I'm doing with double above knee amputee running, but yeah, who knows? Maybe.
Well, if you ever want a running partner, let me know.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Where do you live?
I'm in Santa Rosa Beach. I'm up in the Panhandle, Florida.
Okay, cool, man. Well, yeah, let's definitely go for a run together sometime. That'd be awesome.
Well, you know what? That's a great place to segue into our final segment, the countdown to impact. It's 3, 2, 1. It's 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person who've all made an impact in your life.
Let's go 3 books. First book would be Extreme Ownership, which is written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. It's essentially about how you are responsible for everything that affects your mission in life, your mission at work, your mission in your family. You're responsible, so you need to be the one that takes responsibility for that. You need to figure out what the problems are. You need to take the actions to solve those problems and figure out what the solutions are. And if you blame anybody else for anything that's going on in your life, that is a recipe for failure, because when you blame somebody else, you have no power. You give up all your power. And the way that manifested for me was I took ownership of my attitude and the way that I looked at my injury and what I was going to be able to do from the moment I asked for that funny hat from my mom. I started taking ownership of how I could help people. Yeah, exactly.
Way to suck up to the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully Jocko listens to this podcast. So that'd be one. Another one would be, the original book was called Assault on Lake Casitas, but the current title, I think, is Olympian. That was written by my rowing coach, Brad Allen Lewis. It was about his story of winning the gold medal in the 1984 Olympics in the double, and about how he and his rowing partner had to essentially take control of their training, and is an incredible story of how they came back from being kicked out of the camp that they were in to winning gold in the 84 Olympics. And it's really about a good book about what true dedication means. to true dedication to one thing. And then I would say, this isn't a book, but when I joined the Marines, I found out about this website called Jim Jones, Gym Jones, and the founder there was Mark Twight. And I remember one of the things I loved doing was he would write these basically journal entries every Sunday, and he would put it on the website. And a lot of the stuff that he was writing about, I think, prepared me for my injury, about how, hey, when you have, find the problem, fix the problem. Like, what's the problem in your life? Figure out what the solution is to it, and fix that problem. The mind is primary. What your body's going to do, what your mind tells it to do. So you have to be squared away in your mind before you expect to do anything with your body, before you expect to do anything physically. And so, yeah, I think that reading that, being armed with that kind of philosophy certainly helped me on my injury. So those would be the three books. Yeah, I would say two quotes I really like. Well, maybe one quote would be, once a Marine, always a Marine. As a Marine, once you earn that title, you have it for the rest of your life, regardless of where you go and what you're doing. Even if you're in the Marine Corps, you have it. And along with that title comes the responsibility of acting like a Marine and being a Marine. So you can't just let the fact that you're retired from the Marine Corps, you've been wounded, stop you from living up to that title. And I think so that would be one. And let's see, another one that I like is John F. Kennedy, when he was talking about going to the moon. He was asking, why do we choose to go to the moon? Not because it's easy, but because it is hard. And so to me, that speaks to, you do things because they're the right thing, even when it's the hard thing to do. Do the right thing for the right reasons, even if it's the more difficult choice to have to make. So those are the two quotes I would do. And then what was the last one?
One person who's made an impact in your life.
For that one, I'm going to go my wife, Pam. And then, subsequently, my growing family, every member of that family, they're the reason that I do anything. They're the reason that they're what gives me the strength to overcome all the stuff that I'm facing in my life. And the reason is because if I put them before myself, if I focus on what I can do for them, that is what gives me the strength to overcome the little stuff in life and the big stuff in life. It doesn't matter what the challenge you face is, as long as you figure out what is the best thing that I can do for the people that I care about more than myself. That is how you tap into this well of strength that most people don't know how to find. And, exemplified by, what we did in the military. There's no way I could have been able to walk through a minefield unless I was doing it for my fellow Marines. There's no way you could do what you were doing unless you were doing it for your fellow soldiers. There's no way somebody dies on a grenade for their own benefit. They're doing it for the people that they care about. And those are the greatest acts of courage and strength that you could find out there, to sacrifice yourself for somebody else. And it comes from a place of looking out for the people that you care about more than yourself.
What does living a life of impact mean to you?
I would say living a life of impact to me means figuring out how you can help people, help the people around you. And whether or not you've made an impact is determined by whether or not you've helped another person. And so that's what you need to do. If you want to be an impactful person, figure out how you can help the people that you care about, figure out how you can help other people, and act on that. And you will be living a life of impact.
All right, Rob, where can people follow, and find out more about you?
Oh, sure. Instagram, I'm at Rob Jones Journey. LinkedIn, same thing. Those are kind of the two top places. My website, my personal website is robjonesjourney.com. I'm also a leadership instructor at Echelon Front, so you can go to echelonfront.com to check out what we do there, teach some leadership. And yeah, those would be the primary places to find me.
All right. Well, my friend, thank you very much. And I really appreciated you sharing your story today.
Hey, thanks a lot for talking to me, Aaron. It's a real an honor to meet you.